This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world. One of Latin America's literary giants, Eduardo Galeano, died on Monday in Montevideo, Uruguay. He was 74. The Uruguayan novelist and journalist made headlines when Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez gave President Obama a copy of his classic work, The Open Veins of Latin America, 5 Centuries of the Pillage of a Continent. Since its publication in 1971, Open Veins has sold over 1 million copies worldwide, despite being banned by the military governments in Chile, Argentina, and his native country of Uruguay. While in exile after the Uruguayan military junta seized power in the 1973 coup, Galeano began work on his classic trilogy, Memory of Fire, which rewrites 5 centuries of North and South American history. He's also the author of Soccer in Sun and Shadow, Upside Down, The Book of Embraces, We Say No Voices of Time and Mirrors, among others. His most recent book was called Children of the Days. He received numerous international prizes, including the Lannan Prize for Cultural Freedom, the Casa de las Américas Prize, and the first Distinguished Citizen of the region by the countries of Mercosur.
The writer John Berger said of Eduardo Galeano, quote, "To publish Eduardo Galeano is to publish the enemy of lies, indifference, above all of forgetfulness. Thanks to him, our crimes will be remembered. His tenderness is devastating, his truthfulness furious." In 2013, Nermeen Sheikh and I spoke to Eduardo Galeano in our New York studio when his book Children of the Days, A Calendar of Human History, had first been published. Before we go to a clip of that interview, Juan, the significance of Eduardo Galeano.
Well, this is a huge loss, not only for Latin America, but for the those who are fighting for social justice and for truth around the world. And, you know, it's a remarkable reflection, the number of world leaders who made statements yesterday after learning of Galeano's death. Brazil's president, Dilma Rousseff, said Galeano's death was a big loss, particularly for those fighting for a Latin America that is more inclusive, just, and united. And she went on to say, may his work and example of struggle stay with us and inspire us each day to build a better future for Latin America. You had Evo Morales, a president of Brazil, call Galeano a maestro of the liberation of the people. I'm sorry, Bolivia, and also Greece's president, Alexis Tsipras, noted that the death of Galeano affected every citizen of Europe. So there's been a enormous outpouring of condolences and remembrances of the legacy of Galeano.
And we will continue to talk about him as we play excerpts of our interviews. First, this interview that Nermeen Sheikh and I did with him when his last book came out.
You've often quoted Pablo Picasso saying that art is a lie that tells the truth. So what do you see as the significance of art and of your writing in particular, its relationship to the truth and to politics?
To politics and to everything else. For instance, what is a good writer from my point of view? That we is able to make the past become present, telling a history of 2 centuries ago, or 3 centuries, or 4, or I don't know how much. And the reader may feel it's happening right here and now. The past turned to be present in the magic words of a good writer. That's a lie in the sense that what he or she is telling it's not happening now. But thanks to these art prodigies, the art magic powers, it does occur in today. I remember that, you know, I didn't receive a formal education. I was educated in the Montevideo cafe, in the cafes of Montevideo. There I received my first lessons in the art of telling stories, the storytelling. I was very, very young and sat one table, neighbor of other table of people, old people or more or less old, and they were telling stories, and I was hearing, because they were very good storytellers, anonymous. And one of them was telling a story about a battlefield at the beginning of the 20th century in Uruguay, in a war period, in the countryside. He was walking among the killed soldiers of both sides. They were distinguished by a ribbon in the front, the white and the red. And suddenly he found an angel. That was what he said. I found an angel with the arms open, laid in the grass, and a bullet had entered into his head, crossing the white ribbon. But he could read in the white ribbon with this stain, manchas stain of blood all along it. But something was written there. For my country, no, patria. How is it patria in English? Country.
Country.
For my country, and for her. And the bullet had entered in the word her. And so I felt I was looking at that man who had died 50 years ago or 60 years ago. So this was a lie, but a lie telling the truth. This was art. And art done by an anonymous person, I mean, with no pretensions of being, elected by the finger of God. There are some writers who feel they are elected by God. I'm not. I'm elected by the devil. This is clear.
I wanted to ask you about the power of silence as you talk about words. You were born in Uruguay. You left at the time of the coup. You were imprisoned briefly?
Sí, briefly.
Why did they imprison you briefly?
I never knew. Everybody was in prison. Even if you feel or you were, practically free, but it was an entire country in prison, and Uruguay was at that time world champion of torture. Everybody was tortured. I wasn't. I was lucky enough to avoid it. And torture was quite efficient. Not in the sense that it's told by some fans of torture. No, not in this sense. It's almost never useful to get information. And the purpose of torture is not getting information, it's spreading fear. And in this sense, torture was very efficient in Uruguay. It was an entire country sick, enfermo, of fear. I remember I received in exile in Barcelona some letters, anonymous letters with no indications of address, of names, or nothing, no, of course. And one of the letters said, it's terrible. Learn to lie. But, we had no choice. We are obliged to lie, day and night lying, and it's horrible. But worse than learning to lie is teaching to lie. and I have 3 children.
3 children?
That was what the letter said. Worse than learn to lie was teaching to lie. And I have 3 children.
On the issue of silence, you went from Uruguay to Argentina, and there the torture, the repression was intense.
Yes, yes.
You were editor of a magazine, and you answered the censorship with silence. Explain.
Yes. Yes, finally I fled away from Argentina also, because I couldn't stay in Uruguay because I don't like to be in jail, and I didn't stay in Argentina. I could not, because I didn't want to lay in a cemetery. Because as I told you before, death is very boring.
You've said that a lot of your work, I mean, it's obvious from even what you've read, a lot of your work is about reclaiming different histories, not only in Latin America, but also in Latin America, to overcome what you've called the problem of amnesia. Could you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Amnesia?
Yes.
That we have a memory cut in pieces, and I write trying to recover our real memory, the memory of humankind, what I call the human rainbow, which is much more colorful and beautiful than the other one, the other rainbow. But the human rainbow had been mutilated by machismo, racism, militarism, and a lot of other isms who have been terribly killing our greatness, our possible greatness, our possible beauty.
Eduardo Galeano, acclaimed Uruguayan writer and journalist, speaking on Democracy Now! In 2013. Eduardo Galeano died on Monday in Montevideo, Uruguay. We'll come back to more of our interviews with him in a moment.